Okay, so let's jump into this ancient story that honestly feels like it could have happened yesterday. It's all about a group of workers, a really generous boss, and a complaint that, well, let's be real, you've probably felt it, or at least heard it in your own life. Hey, that's not fair. So let's just put the big question right on the table from the get-go. Imagine this. You put in a full, hard 12-hour day, and the person who strolls in for the very last hour gets the exact same paycheck as you. Is that fair? Just kind of mull that over for a second, because this is where the whole thing gets really interesting. All right, here's the play-by-play. A landowner heads out at the crack of dawn, 6 a.m., hires some folks, and they all agree on the day's pay, 1 denarius. Simple enough. But then he keeps going out at 9 a.m., at noon, at 3 p.m., hiring more people. He even finds one last group at 5 p.m., with only an hour of daylight left. Then, boom. It's quitting time, and everyone from the guy who was there for 12 hours to the person who just showed up gets paid the exact same single coin. And exactly as you'd predict, the first crew is absolutely furious. They start protesting, saying, hey, we were out here sweating through the heat of the entire day. How is it fair that these latecomers get the same reward? And you know what? If you're just looking at it from a logical, time is money perspective, they kind of have a point, right?
But this is where we have to hit the brakes and zoom out a little. This story was never meant to be a lesson on how to run a payroll department. To really get what's going on, we have to look at why this story was even told in the first place.
So the setup for this is absolutely everything. This parable wasn't just some random story. It was a direct answer to one of the disciples, Peter. He basically turned around and asked, look, we've given up everything to follow you. So, what's in it for us? He's keeping a tally. He wants to know what he's earned.
And that right there is the whole point. This isn't a story about fair wages at all. It's a story that's meant to completely short-circuit our normal human ideas about value, about rewards, and about fairness. It's trying to introduce a totally different way of thinking. You could call it an economy of grace.
So what we have here is this incredible clash between two totally different worldviews. On one side, you've got the worker's logic, which, let's face it, is how most of us operate day to day. And on the other side, you've got the landowner's logic, which represents something completely different. For the workers, fairness is all a transaction. It's based on merit. I worked more hours, so I deserve more pay. This way of thinking always leads to comparing yourself to others, and that's a quick path to feeling resentful. But the owner, he's not thinking about merit. He's thinking about grace. For him, fairness is about his own generosity. It's about his desire to meet the needs of every single person he invited into his field, no matter when they got the invitation. So the landowner just cuts right to the heart of it with this powerful, game-changing question. He's basically saying, look, I didn't cheat you. You got exactly the pay we agreed on. The real problem here isn't my unfairness. The problem is your envy, because I was generous to someone else. Wow. That just reframes their entire complaint, doesn't it? The story wraps up with this famously confusing line. So the last will be first, and the first will be last. Now, this doesn't mean people are just going to swap places in a queue. It's talking about a complete flip, a total reversal of our attitude and what we think is important. So what does it actually mean? Well, being first in the way we usually think about it is all about seeking status, sizing yourself up against others, feeling like you're entitled to more. That's the mindset of those complaining workers. To be last in this new way of thinking means you serve humbly, you don't need the spotlight, and you focus on contributing, not competing. Just think about it like a group project. The first mindset, that's the person who's always trying to be the leader, making sure everyone knows just how much work they're putting in. But the last mindset, that's the quiet person in the corner who just does the work, helps other people out, and is focused on the whole team succeeding, not on getting personal credit. They often contribute the most, but want the least amount of praise for it. And this all leads us to the final, and I think the most powerful takeaway from this whole story. If the money, the payment isn't really the point, then what is? That 1 denarius, it's not really a wage you earn, it's a gift. It symbolizes something like salvation or grace, something that's given freely and equally to anyone who says yes to the invitation. It doesn't matter if you've been a believer your entire life or you find faith in your final hour. The gift itself is the same for everybody. So if we look back at the story with this new lens, those workers who were there from the beginning, they just completely missed the boat. The real reward wasn't the coin they got at the end of the day. The true reward was the work itself. It was the absolute privilege of being invited out of idleness and into the landowner's vineyard, to have a purpose, to belong to something, to contribute. They got to spend the entire day in the presence of this generous owner. That was the real prize. And that leaves us with a pretty big question to chew on. In our own lives, in our jobs, our friendships, our families, what would actually change if we stopped focusing so much on what we've earned? What if we started seeing the chance to just show up and participate as the real gift? What if we all just stopped keeping score?